Yeah.
We both, we're in the first day of the conference,
Right.
and we've both been a bit distracted by telephone calls from journalists about the Mark Mathis fiasco.
Yes.
But I think we both attended Ellen Johnson's
Yes.
opening speech. She's the president of the Atheists. Is it American Atheists they're called? Atheists?
Yes.
And what was your impression of her speech?
Oh, I thought it was wonderful. I mean,
Yeah.
she's sort of put out a call for more activism, and I think that's what we need. That she was saying, you've got to get off your butts, and you've got to get out and do things. And she was making a very strong point that if you talk about agnostics, atheists, free thinkers in general, it's 11% of the population. We're a pretty significant voting bloc, if only we got our act together.
Compared, for example, to other voting blocs
Yes.
who are taken very seriously indeed
Exactly.
by politicians.
And if you look at the United States and the way she was portraying it is we're this hodgepodge of these little groups. They're all 5 to 15%, various groups. There's nobody that's really hugely dominating the landscape. But there are certain groups that are getting much more media attention and that are respected much more by politicians, because the politicians know that those little groups will turn out the vote for them or against them. And atheists are not in that group. We're a large group, a very substantial group, but we don't have that kind of unity where they're afraid that we will withhold our vote if they don't get their vote.
Those other influential lobbies, sometimes I've asked people why this is, because it's always puzzled me. And one of the answers I've got is that they tend to be one-issue voters, so that they, they are sort of passionately in favour of Israel or something of that sort. And so it's very easy for politicians to fall in with their wishes, because their wishes apply to a particular issue
Right.
or set of issues. Could it be that we are too heterogeneous in the issues that we support? I don't see why that should be, actually. I mean, I could imagine we have a fair degree of uniformity over voting issues.
There are certain issues where I think we do have unity. Things like, keep the Ten Commandments out of the courtrooms and so forth. That we would rather not see more secularization, that we'd like to see more money flowing away from the churches and into secular causes. Let's end this faith-based stuff.
And stop the churches having
Yes.
tax.
But one thing that
deductible
Ellen did not
status.
talk about, and that I think might be a factor too, is that we tend to be a bit different from all the others, in that we are opposing things. Like if we want to tax the churches, most of these other groups think that's a horrible idea. So in aggregate, they outnumber us pretty significantly.
Because those other groups are churches themselves, you mean?
Yes, because they can unite on that issue.
Yes.
Where even we cannot unite particularly effectively on that.
That's right. Because although we're quite big compared to any one of those other groups, they are united on that, so they all add up together on that issue.
Right. But I think it's also just a factor that atheists tend not to be joiners. We don't form these clubs very readily. And even if we do form these clubs, they tend to be rather fractious affairs where we argue a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We put value on skepticism and doubt and argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the kind of thing to foster a strong community, a unified community.
Yes. I'm not sure that religious people don't argue quite a lot as well. I mean, particularly with those denominations that are right close to them.
Right, but at least within their denomination, they can close ranks pretty quickly against the outsider.
Yeah. And they have a kind of hierarchy of authority.
Yes.
Which is, authority is pretty much anathema to atheists.
Yeah. And, you notice this in your talk, too, that right after your talk, people came up and they argued with you.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Which is great.
Yes.
Even if you disagree with them or if you agree with them, what happened after your talk was that there was dissent and debate, and that's what we do.
And that's very stimulating.
Yes.
That's what we want, yes.
Yeah, and I noticed too that you conceded a few points, which is also what we do is, we're willing to argue about these things, and we're also willing to back down and say, okay.
You listen to the arguments and you back down, yes.
Yes, you've given me a better idea. I think that's a better idea. I will follow that idea.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite hard to imagine a Catholic bishop or something doing that.
Well, yeah, because you can't argue with God. He's given you the answer, right?
Yeah, well, the Pope, anyway.
Yeah.
one of the fashionable jargon words in our field at the moment is evo-devo, evolution and development. What does it mean to you?
Well, it's a funny word for one thing.
Yeah.
But what it means is that we're trying to bring developmental biology into the mainstream of evolutionary biology. That we have a long tradition where development has been kind of left out of most of the formulations of evolutionary theory. And that goes right back to the neo-Darwinian synthesis. You know, Richard Goldschmidt was our proponent at that point, and a lot of what he suggested wasn't quite right and antagonized a lot of people, although I think there was a lot of worth to what Goldschmidt was actually saying. And since then, developmental biologists and evolutionary biologists didn't relate much until roughly the 1980s. When Christiane Nusslein-Volhard and Eric Wieschaus did all their groundbreaking work on molecular biology of the developing Drosophila embryo, and just broke the field wide open, because now all of a sudden we had the molecules, we had the tools, we had the genetic tools to do comparative work in lots and lots of different developing systems. We could look at the developmental processes that are going on in nematodes and fruit flies and zebrafish and mice and people and all these kinds of good things. And obviously at that point we had to bring evolutionary theory right there into the middle of developmental biology. It was crucial to make that a part of it. And since then it's just grown stronger and stronger. That it's become a hugely powerful discipline within biology, where we're learning all kinds of new things, where we're explicitly comparing developmental processes in many different organisms and trying to figure out how those are related through evolutionary events. So that's evo-devo in a nutshell.
Goldschmidt, indeed, I mean, could be said to be the father of that, but he also is known for championing macromutational steps in evolution, and I think a lot of the hostility to Goldschmidt comes from that.
Right.
Would you wish to defend that?
Leaps in a single generation? No way. No.
Okay.
And the thing is, a lot of what Goldschmidt was saying was really interesting phenomena that we kind of neglected, that we kind of swept under the rug for a long time. You know, what Goldschmidt studied were, first of all, he's studying Lymantria, the moth, and he's looking at metamorphosis. And he's saying, okay, well, you've got caterpillars and you've got these moths. They're very different morphologies, yet obviously it's the same genetics, the same genome in all of those. He's looking at male and female, and again, differences between these, but they've got basically the same genes. And he was also looking at phenocopies, where you can have environmental effects that induce phenomena that look very much like genetic changes, so you can mimic genetic changes with the environment. And he was arguing that there has to be large-scale regulatory elements that can switch the genome into one mode or another mode. And from that perspective, hopeful monsters start to look a little more promising. Well, it's just a mode switch, you know, like the switch between male and female.
Which Waddington took up in a big way later.
Yes. But of course, since what we've discovered, it's much more complicated than that. It's not. He talked about global systemic macro mutations, and we really don't see those. What we see is lots and lots of little switches all over the place.
Yes.
Where again, we're back in the field of conventional Darwinian theory, where we're looking at gradual changes by making small changes in lots of places over time. Yeah. And you really can't call that hopeful monsters anymore. But the general principle is the same, that switches are important, okay? Little switches that will change things instead of big switches. And the phenomena he was describing, like metamorphosis, like sex differences, they're still there. They've got to be explained.
Yes.
We've got to understand what's going on in the genome to reconfigure itself basically into these modes over life histories.
Yes.
And how we did that in evolution.